and I wasn't familiar with any of this, and I got to know a guy across the pond, as they say, by the name of Ned Naylor Leyland, who is a financial, I guess we'll call him a money manager over there. But he's really made himself, and deservedly so, into one of the preeminent bugs. I love that term. Preeminent silver bugs, gold bugs in the world, and is doing a wonderful job spreading the word. And Ned put on a conference. He hosted it. His firm put it on back in January, so 10 months ago. He had this great list of speakers. If you go to their website, his company is Cheviot Asset Management, which is Cheviot. If you Google Cheviot Asset Management, it'll take you to the site because it's like a .uk or something like that. On that home page, there's a link to what was called the Sound Money Conference. And when you go into the Sound Money Conference, you can watch videos of all these different presenters that were there. Well, one of the presenters that day was this Hugo Salinas Price. And Hugo is I guess you call him retired. I mean, I don't mean to make it sound like he's just this old dude, but he's an older gentleman, and he's a retired, very wealthy man in Mexico, and he's made it kind of his deal to promote silver as, I want to say, an alternative, as a supplemental currency within Mexico. And the key, as I understand it, to his plan is to make a silver coin that does not have a set denomination, and that if you own a Canadian maple leaf, for example, a lot of folks have sleeves of those. They're very pretty, by the way, but on there it says $5. Okay, I don't know what, frankly, I don't even care what if you can use that to buy something for $5 Canadian. I suppose you probably can. But that's a lousy deal because that thing's worth 35 American. So who's going to take that thing and buy, a magazine in Canada? Doesn't work that way. So it's held instead as investment or a collector's item because the silver itself is worth more. So what Hugo Salinas Price is doing is he's promoting this plan that will make the coin, you still be a silver coin, but it will have a variable denomination. That's the right word. Where one day it'll be worth $35, but the next day, or if it's revalued weekly or something, might be worth 36. And the beauty of that is it would give the average everyday Mexican an inflation hedge. The value of their money could not be devalued. How's that? So it's fantastic. It's a fantastic way to do it. So anyway, that's the first thing that came to mind when you asked me that question. I would encourage anybody listening to go to that Cheviot site, look up the Sound Money Conference, and watch Hugo's presentation and get all the details. But I'm not saying it's the way to do it, but it's certainly a feasible way that silver could become money again.
Okay, thanks. I know you're familiar with FOFOA, F-O-F-O-A's website, and they got into it quite a bit with regard to bimetallism and gold or silver.
Yeah.
Consequently, it's something that could create problems in that you've got two different metals, each with their own supply and demand characteristics, and hypothetically, a central banking or exchange facility would need to have an infinite supply of gold or silver available to buy or sell and make market in order to establish the pricing that would then underlie a bimetal marketplace.
Well, and that's all part of the problem. Yeah, that's what makes, that was why Nixon closed the gold window. And that would make this idea of going back to a gold standard, that's what makes it so, I don't want to say impractical, but it makes it really hard to do.
Yeah, the other thing is we do have decimal places, and as long as you can take your fiat script in and exchange it for
Right.
units of metal, they can shave it down to a very, very fine little piece. It doesn't have to be even something. You get a BB, and it's maybe 1/50th of an ounce,
Yeah.
something like that, a flattened
Yeah,
BB.
or even if
So
it was just a digital credit that you
there you
knew
go.
was allocated to you.
Yeah.
The thing that eventually will stop is just this unlimited ability to just create money from nothing, from whole cloth. That
Yes.
you have to have, a quarter of an ounce of gold for every $1,000 that you wish to create or something. I mean, this is a far bigger problem and for more people that are far smarter than I to solve. But it will come back to something like that to rein in this destructive power that governments have to confiscate your wealth through the destruction of your purchasing power.
Well, we'll
And
come and talk about that in a little bit when we come back to another question of mine, which I know you're going to love, Turd. But in the meantime, we need to roll over into charts and technical readings on precious
hey,
metals.
all
Hey, yeah,
right.
your topic area. And the first person to hit you up with an impossible to answer question is our good friend RTG.
Well, hello, Turd.
There he is. Hi, RTG.
Yes. Hi. After reading your postings, this is such a pleasure for me to finally talk with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Sure. Okay. Turd, it's often said that the real professional silver traders trade silver by following the gold-silver ratio. How much weighting does the gold-silver ratio receive in the Turd's silver market calculations, and are you currently getting any market signals?
Well, this will only add to my reputation as being a non-professional silver trader. I can tell you that because I don't look at that at all.
Okay.
The metals markets. Let me back up. There's historic ratios of the value to gold and to gold of gold to silver and vice versa hold some water. In the current way that the world has decided to allow metals to be priced, it doesn't matter what the ratio is because gold is and silver are priced off of the COMEX and the LBMA in the futures markets using paper metal, which is undoubtedly leveraged 50 or 100 to 1 versus the actual physical metal that's there. Prices are manipulated and suppressed on an almost daily basis. And so this whole idea that silver is this and so therefore gold should be that based on what today's prices are, that is just nonsense. It just doesn't have anything to do with anything. Now, eventually, once we're allowed to actually have some type of true and fair price discovery, okay, then fine. Then things might revert to some historical number, but I don't use that as any calculation where I think things are going tomorrow. What was the second part of your question?
Have you currently gotten any do you have any current market signals? But you don't really follow it that closely.
Well, so. I look at some of the more fundamental stuff. I finally couldn't take it anymore. I'm very fortunate that I made what turned out to be a rather prescient post on Monday night. But I was itching and had been itching for a couple of weeks to get excited and to throw a little raw meat to all the turdites, as we call them, and give them something to be excited about. And I put something out a couple of weeks ago, and everything kind of still kept going sideways. And I kept watching things, and finally what pushed me over the edge last weekend was something that we call the Commitment of Traders Report. That is data that is compiled on a weekly basis it's a summary of long and short positions of speculators, small and large, meaning like banks and hedge funds and people like that. And the banks would fit into like a commercial category. And this summary comes out every week that just shows you the movements of the week prior of who's adding to positions and who's lessening positions. And it's not a be-all, end-all report, but by paying attention to it every week, you can begin to definitely notice some trends. And then the key to that is then knowing what the heck all that information means, what that trend means. And what finally pushed me over the edge last week is you could clearly see in gold. I mean, plain as the nose, if you've been doing this stuff, plain as the nose in your face, that the speculators were out really in almost a record low of speculative longs, as we call it. Well, okay, you think, okay, well then that's a two-edged sword. There's a lot of people that are willing to buy back in once it gets going, so that's good. And on the prevention of having to go down further, well then who's going to sell? If there's not any longs left, especially after you're already down $200, if you haven't sold yet, you're probably not going to sell. So you don't have a lot of selling pressure. You don't have a lot of potential people to sell if things really get going south. So it's like, well, it's not going to go down much further, so it's not going to take much to get it going up. And then when you could look at the bank side of that commitment of traders report and see that banks were beginning to cover their long-held short positions, well, then you knew that then gave you that old adage, that the smart money versus the dumb money. And hey, I'm a speculator, so I'm not calling speculators dumb money and being mean about it. But speculators are usually the dumb money. I mean, they buy high and they sell low. So the speculators are out or getting out or are done and not long. And the banks, who would be the smart money, the ones that actually control the markets, are the ones that are doing the buying. Well, that's not real hard to see where maybe this is a market that's going to go up. And so we've been kind of range bound between roughly 1,600 and 1,700 for 3 or 4 weeks. The chart started to look a little better. And then with that commitment of trades report, I looked at Mrs. Ferguson on Monday, and I said, I got to go down into my office and write something. I was down there for about 2 hours and banged out something Monday that said, I think I said a 10% rally by the end of November. Well, heck, we've already seen at least a third of that happen, maybe half. Thinking maybe we get 1810 or 1820 sometime by Thanksgiving or so. Well, we're about halfway home, yeah. So I'm fortunate that I got that on the record because if gold would have been taken off and I was just sitting there twiddling my thumbs, I'd have felt kind of silly. But anyway, I can tell you this whole story, just if anything, just because not the gold silver ratio, that doesn't mean anything to me. The underlying fundamental things like that commitment traders report is something you can look at every week and use it for some fundamental analysis.
Okay, then I take it you don't follow copper and its relationship to silver very much?
You have to. It's not something that, copper did this, so therefore silver is going to do that. I mean, I don't use it as like some predictor, but you have to follow copper. If you're going to trade commodities or even equities, you have to follow copper. I just don't think you can't use it as a primary, like this is one of 3 things that definitely affect silver. If copper's going up, then silver's, because silver is more and more becoming money, not just a commodity. It's more money like gold. But copper does tell you a lot of things. And I was visiting with a guy by the name of Jim Comiskey last week, who's a longtime commodity trader, and he said,